By now, you've likely seen 2 or 3 videos from your favorite YouTube creators with this title, or something like it. I first saw it from 2 of my favorites, MGTOW 101 and Paul Joseph Watson. And to fill you in case you aren't up to speed on what's happening, YouTube has lost about 250 advertisers, including biggies like Verizon and Coca-Cola, since a brouhaha erupted over ads appearing on the videos of YouTube creators who offer a steady diet of non-PC wrongthink. The projected revenue loss for YouTube for 2017, even if they act fast to comply with ultimatums from advertisers, is $750 million to a cool $1 billion. MGTOW 101 is one of the channels that suddenly found his entire channel demonetized. Acting to protect their financial interests, they flipped a switch on him and other creators, totally wiping out the AdSense-based financial incentive to spend hours on end writing, recording, and editing content. I fully expect to get hit with the same hammer and am indeed surprised it has not happened already. I will get to more of that in a bit, but first I want to address the problem in a little more detail than some others have spent on it. First, this is not just feminists going after MRAs and MGTOW. By all means, we are caught up in the crossfire, but most of the creators under attack are not from the manosphere, and I only use that term for lack of something better. But to the point, what we are seeing here is the consequences of political correctness run amok, and we will see it expressed across the board in content about politics, religion, video games, and indeed men's issues and anti-feminism. YouTube, which is now poised to overtake television in daily broadcast hours consumed, is being taken to task by nervous execs who fear bad PR and boycotts if their products are associated with ideas and opinions that send the snowflake brigades into action. I am normally loath to feel any measure of sympathy at all for a Google-owned enterprise, but there is no denying that $1 billion is a large number that takes on monumental meaning when we're talking about dollars. Companies frequently can't afford to stand on principle if they want to stay in business, and in this case, even a monster like Google can be forced into survival mode for about $1 billion good reasons. So with that in mind, I thought I would just try to look at this past the surface and past what is easy to say. I can spend this time telling you what you already know, that the world has gone crazy, that safe space-needing snowflake asshats have a bizarre amount of power given how weak and pathetic they are as individuals. I could drone on about the Orwellian injustice of all this shit and wax paranoid about what the future will bring for free speech. And of course, all of that would be true, and perhaps a bit more entertaining than what I must say, because I know that what I must say isn't very satisfying. We bring this shit totally on ourselves. As much fun as it is to mock and ridicule social justice warriors, they are still kicking our asses where it counts. At almost any provocation, and by provocation I mean an opportunity to control, their hive mind kicks right into gear and goes into action, terrorizing advertisers, putting the fear of Jesus into college administrators, getting politicians to side with the most draconian legislation imaginable. Yes mean yes, ring a bell? And they can easily walk into social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter and run roughshod over anyone they don't like, which is anyone who disagrees with them. SJWs can launch a petition to demand tax-free tampons and get more signatures by far than a petition urging the release of a falsely imprisoned man. Anita Sarkeesian can fabricate threats out of thin air, and SJW white knights will cut into their food money to line her pockets. And all of this makes a kind of sense. SJWs are groupthink clones. Like a flock of birds, they seem to be of one mind, turning on a dime together mid-flight. I wish I had a lemming analogy for them, but that seems more to fit the opposition group than the social justice crowd, which is to say, sadly, that it appears to fit us better than them. Let me give you another example of what I mean. A story currently in the news cycle, which I have linked in the low bar, is out of Canada's University of Regina. I will pass on my almost instantaneous urge to turn that into a limerick and move on with the story. The university has set up, get this, a male confessional so that male students, a campus minority group, can enter and confess their sins of hypermasculinity, the transgressions of their manhood, and seek absolution. In the spirit of inclusiveness, female students are also invited to confess, but make no mistake, it is the men who are targeted. The project, which is institutionally sanctioned bigotry in action, is purportedly an attempt by campus groups to address problems of violence, which of course we all know that only men are capable of committing. The reaction from parents of students who are paying good money to attend that school? Zip. Zero. Nada. The full-bore bigotry has been met with full-bore silence by the people who ultimately hold the purse strings, the consumer. With thousands of fathers and mothers standing by idly as their sons are subjected to psychological abuse by the school, we get a very clear picture of what the problem is in modern culture. And it is not moral turpitude, weakness, or an arrogant tendency to censor on the part of Google. True, Google is a less than savory company that gives itself way too much latitude to gather information on its users so they can target them for advertising, even to the point that it may cross into illegal invasions of privacy. Setting that aside, though, they are taking a $1 billion hit on this. I would only expect them to react. And they probably need to because the advertisers remaining on the YouTube platform smell blood in the water and are already trying to negotiate better ad rates in the middle of this melee. That is more money out of Google's coffers and ultimately out of the pockets of content creators. The problem here boils down to there being two kinds of people out there. The first group, what I will call Group A, has two subgroups. There are the social justice crowd and the shit stains who cower to them. For example, there are the cancerous lesions on the University of Regina who set up a confessional for young men to seek forgiveness for being male, and there are the cowardly fathers and mothers who underwrite the bigotry by dutifully writing tuition checks and looking the other way as their sons are rounded up for high-tech lynchings. We see these same dynamics when left-wing bigots promote oppressive draconian legislation and right-wing cowardly sycophants stand side by side with them to vote it in. And of course this includes the shit-for-brains constituencies all backslapping and cheering their representatives on, fully oblivious of the fact that the alleged left and right are on the same side. The second group of people in the world, Group B for the purposes of this talk, also falls into two subgroups. The first subgroup is what I call the real advocates for the rational counterculture. People like Paul Joseph Watson, T.J. Kirk, Phil Mason, Milo Yiannopoulos, I dare say myself, and others. There are MGTOWs, MRAs, and PUAs. They are an amazingly diverse group, often whose only shared belief is that the social justice crowd sucks and needs to go. Even people like Christina Hoff Sommers and Tammy Bruce, who are gynocentric blue pill wolves in countercultural clothing, make some modest contributions to the effort, though I think at this point they have outlived their usefulness. The second subgroup are the vast numbers of counterculture sympathizers. These are now literally tens of millions of people across the planet. They are sufficient in numbers to have elected an American president who reacts aggressively to the social justice crowd. They are among millions of YouTube subscribers and have established their presence across all social media platforms and in the comments to relevant content spanning the interwebs. And they all share one thing in common: a complete and totally incapacitating inability to speak collectively. It is easy to assign the same cowardice to most of this that we find in the parents of Regina students and every other university across Canada and the U.S., though I don't think it's quite that simple. I think a lot of it has to do with the counterculture's greatest assets: independence of thought and a tendency toward self-reliance. Sure, there are scores of well-meaning people who talk a good game while they hide behind screen names, but in the current zeitgeist, it's hard to fault them for clinging to the relative safety of their anonymity. Part of it has to do with an exaggerated aversion to any notion of victim politics. One of the more common, and I think one of the dumbest, criticisms I get for my work is that I sound like a feminist or a social justice warrior. The logic being that if I point out problems in talking about them, that makes me just like a feminist. Like I said, it's dumb. Like fence post stupid feminist dumb. But it is indicative of a hyper-reflexive reaction to even a hint of victim identity. And it also contributes to our collective failure to do anything more about social justice warriors than make fun of them. We can't compete with social justice warriors in flexing collective muscle. We are, in fact, outmatched and outwitted by a morally and intellectually inferior opponent. And it won't change till enough people wise up, which will likely be never, in my estimation. And it is not like there isn't a good side to that. Red pill critical thinkers are good at dodging the problems created by the social justice crowd and their step-and-fetch sycophants. Marriage sucks, so we don't get married. Women in this culture are dangerous, so we approach them with extreme caution and with an awareness of enough psychobiology to give us an edge. Male confessionals like the one at Regina are an abomination, so we don't walk in and prostrate ourselves. Indeed, we walk past, entertaining the fantasy of burning said confessionals to the ground. Google AdSense and other sources of revenue for those who create content for this audience is always on shaky ground. So hopefully we plan accordingly, geared for survival. Which brings me to answering the question that formed the title to this talk. Is this my last video? Nope, not by a long shot. I have established accounts at Minds.com and Vimeo. I even have enough server power to personally host and stream my own videos if I can get around the cost of the bandwidth, and if I can overcome the obstacle of losing massive traffic sources like YouTube. Undoubtedly, they will get around to demonetizing me completely like they did with MGTOW 101, and I will take such demonetization as a precursor to being wiped off YouTube completely. I don't delude myself into thinking that there will be enough collective negative reaction to even cause a blip on Google's radar. And that, unfortunately, is the reality we're looking at. When the age of major social media platforms for countercultural expression comes to a halt at the hands of the social justice establishment, it will come to pass without any real upheaval. There is simply not enough people with the resolve to band together and put a price tag on it. Most will be too busy proving they are not like feminists to act in their own best interest. Verizon and Coke won't feel a financial sting. Google and other internet giants will simply choose what is in their financial interest. What remains of the countercultural voices will either improvise and adapt, take a stand on websites like Breitbart till Google delists them, or simply fade away in defeat. So when the day comes that social justice warriors succeed, as they most certainly will, in getting all dissent removed from major social media platforms, I will be prepared to carry on creating the kind of content you want, hopefully with financial support from those who can afford to toss something in the tip jar. If that sounds like a pitch for my Patreon and to my private subscriptions, it is. The links are in the low bar. There is no doubt that darker days are coming. For what it's worth, to the many people who have supported my work for so long, you have my word that I will go down swinging. I didn't do what I've been doing for the past decade to be silenced now. As a footnote to end this talk, I have had reports from several subscribers that they have been spontaneously unsubbed from this channel, and I have heard it's been happening to others as well. One safeguard that may help this is to subscribe to the channel feed. You can do that by going to the channel page and clicking on the bell in the upper right corner. See the image I'm providing here. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this talk, and I will see you next time.